Welcome to the Here's My Story channel. I'm Scarlet. One morning, the director of the children's home woke me up. She said, "Scarlet, wake up, put on your best clothes and come to my office. I can't believe it. It's unbelievable," and left. I didn't get it. When one of the girls said, "You're so lucky. A really wealthy family is going to adopt you. They say it's the wealthiest family in the world." My eyes widened. I'd be adopted by the wealthiest family in the world? Last night, I went to sleep crying. Why am I so unlucky? Was I wrong? I had never met my biological parents. My mom left me at a children's home and never came back. I was adopted when I was 6. My foster parents fought all the time. I wasn't happy, but at least I had a home. But in the end, they divorced and sent me back to the children's home. But it looked like luck was on my side this time. I knocked on the door and walked into the director's room. A lovely hip couple in their 30s were sitting on the sofa. "Scarlet, let me introduce you to your new family. This is Mrs. and Mr. Wilson." The woman stood up. "Honey, you look much prettier and healthier in person. We finished the paperwork for adoption. Welcome to our family," she said, giving me a hug. We got in the luxury car waiting for us and drove away. We left the city and entered the woods. We drove through the woods for hours. Finally, we entered a property surrounded by great walls. Mr. Wilson smiled. "We got the biggest room on the top floor ready for you. I'm sure you'll like it. By the way, we have a well-equipped hospital in our mansion. Our doctors will do a checkup on you tomorrow morning." Mrs. Wilson said, "We're very curious about the results. It's important that our daughter is healthy, right?" and winked at her husband. A maid took me to my room. I learned that her name was Margaret. For some reason, she looked sad, but I couldn't ask her why because we'd just met. My room was truly amazing. The wardrobe was full of fabulous clothes. I loved having my own bathroom the most because I could have been lost looking for them in that vast mansion. "I'll leave you alone. You've had a long journey. I'm sure you want to rest," Margaret said, forcing a smile. "I should be tired, but I'm so happy. I don't feel tired. This is the best day of my life!" I screamed. Margaret looked at me with pity and mumbled, "Poor girl." I think she blurted that out involuntarily because as soon as she said it, she looked up to a spot on the ceiling. I also followed her eyes and saw a security camera up there. Yes, there was a security camera installed in my room. This was quite disturbing, but I didn't dwell on it because I thought, they're the richest family on earth, so it makes sense that security is important to them. I was still curious why Margaret called me a poor girl, but she almost ran away from my room before I could ask her why. In the morning, the doctors at the hospital performed a checkup on me. The tests took all day. They checked everything, including my hair. As I left, a doctor said, "The results are great. You're a very healthy young girl, just as we needed." "Just as you need? What does that mean? Could you explain, please?" I asked, but the doctor only smiled. I never saw Mr. and Mrs. Wilson after that first day when they brought me here. I spent my time in my room. Margaret brought in my food, and I ate there. I went out to the garden several times, but as soon as I stepped out, 2 bodyguards would appear right next to me and never leave as I took a stroll. One day, I saw another door on the other side of the garden. This was probably the staff door. I was curious, so I walked toward it. The bodyguards panicked for some reason. They wanted me to come back home immediately. Because they made me uneasy, I never went to the garden again. There was only a TV in my room. I didn't have a laptop or a phone. Inevitably, I was bored out of my mind. When Margaret brought in my dinner, I asked her, "Life's so boring without the internet. I want to ask Mr. and Mrs. Wilson to get me a phone. Where can I find them?" Margaret said, "This is not a good idea. This place is a total disappointment for me. Don't be surprised if you come to my room someday and find I'm gone. I might make a run for it," I said, winking. Margaret's eyes grew bigger. She nervously glanced at the security camera and shook her head. "No." I was just making a joke. I was surprised by Margaret's reaction. I watched some more TV and then turned it off. I was so bored. I was going to give it a try even if Margaret said it wasn't a good idea. Christmas was next week. I was sure that Mr. and Mrs. Wilson would get me a present. They wouldn't say no if I asked them for a phone. I mustered up my courage and decided to go talk to them, but I couldn't leave my room because the door was always locked. Before this, I never needed to leave the room at night. They had probably been locking it every night, but I wasn't aware of it. This couldn't be because of safety reasons because I was already inside the house. They were apparently keeping me locked up. When Margaret brought me my breakfast, I asked her why the door was locked. Instead of answering, she said, how about taking a shower? I'll bring you some fresh towels. I said yes because I thought she'd said this for a reason. As I was showering, Margaret came in. I'm leaving the towels here, she said. I couldn't see her through the steam in the bathroom. I took the towel and dried myself when I got out of the shower. When I looked in the mirror, a surprise awaited me there. It said on the steamy mirror, I will help you. Everything will be okay. I was shocked. I was sure Margaret was the one who wrote that. The next few days were calmer. I didn't see Mr. and Mrs. Wilson even at Christmas. I knew something unusual was going on here. Finally, it was December 31st. This was my first time alone on New Year's Eve. That day, much more was happening in the garden than usual. People were coming into the mansion, leaving, and carrying stuff inside. I was curious, so I started watching everything from the window. A car arrived and stopped in front of the mansion. An elderly couple stepped out of the vehicle. I was shocked to realize they looked much like Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. I looked closely. It was definitely them, but this wasn't possible. They looked like they were in their 30s the day I met them. Now they looked around 60 or 70. My knees were shaking. I closed the curtain in fear. I began to wait anxiously. Around midnight, my door opened. 2 guards told me they needed to take me to the hospital. I went with them because I trusted Margaret. They took me to a room. There were 3 chairs inside. Old Mr. Wilson sat on one side and old Mrs. Wilson on the other. They never looked at me. I was so scared my mouth was dry. The nurse sat me down on a chair. She tied me up with 2 hoses on both arms as if she would connect me to an IV. She connected one of the hoses to Mr. Wilson and the other to Mrs. Wilson. At that moment, I realized that they were going to transfer something from me to them. I panicked. What are you going to do to me? Leave me alone! I yelled. Meanwhile, one of the doctors gave me an injection. I was sure it was a sedative because I was starting to lose consciousness. Just then, someone broke the door with a kick and barged in. Everyone was shocked. It was Margaret. She yelled, FBI, you are under arrest. Put your hands on your head and lie face down on the ground. Margaret wasn't wearing her usual maid costume. She had on a vest that said FBI. My eyes were about to close, but I was still shocked. Margaret, you were a cop? Was all I could utter. Meanwhile, Mr. Wilson screamed, Security! Where are you? Security! Take this woman out! No one can help you now. I took care of everyone. My colleagues are waiting for you outside. You're going to jail, she said. We are the wealthiest family on earth. We can give you an unimaginable sum of money, Mrs. Wilson attempted to say. Margaret yelled, Shut up, and taped Mrs. Wilson's mouth. That's when the meds started working, and I must have dozed off. I was in a hospital room when I woke up, but this was a different place. I saw Margaret when my eyes adjusted to the light. You saved my life. Thank you, I said. Margaret nodded with a smile. What was going on in that house? I asked. She began to explain it all. Did you know that Mr. Wilson is 180 years old and Mrs. Wilson is 178? Long ago, they established a research lab to find an anti-aging method. After many years of research, scientists found a horrible medical treatment where they transferred all the cells of a 16-year-old to the Wilsons. That's how the Wilsons' dead cells are replaced with new ones. They go back to being 35 years old. The new cells live for exactly a year. The aging accelerates in the year's final months, so they look old now. To be young again, they must do this cell renewal procedure on December 31st. That's why they adopt a young person every year. Unfortunately, you were this year's victim, honey. What would have happened if you hadn't saved me? I asked. The young person whose cells are transferred feels like life was squeezed out of them like a lemon and go into a vegetative state. We learned that they adopted a kid every year, and then the kid disappeared. I'm an FBI agent who works in covert operations. I planted myself there as a maid 9 months ago. We've been preparing for this December 31st operation since then. Thankfully, everything went as planned and we were able to save you. Margaret replied. I went back to the children's home after I left the hospital. I see Margaret quite often, and we have a strong bond. My current goal is to finish high school with a good GPA, get a scholarship at a good college, and then become an FBI agent like her. It makes no sense for a person to call themselves lucky or unlucky, because this whole thing has taught me that only you can make your own luck.